So hello again, and this is John Foster. So today we're doing the Orlandoo Hunter OH32A03 Chassis, and we're doing the Land Rover Defender 110 long wheel race, and this is parts bag B. This is the steering and transmission rods that you use, and yeah, we've got the small rods here, small tie rods, and it's just making sure that they're the right lengths and making sure that the buckles at the end are the right orientation, and that's in the manual. So we'll be doing the manual. So as you can see from the manual, we've got to make various lengths. On this particular one, we need to make sure that there's a 9mm and that these end buckles are 90 degrees to each other. We've got to make a 22.2mm, a 13.8mm, a 14.2mm, a 24.2mm, a 24.8mm. So looks to me like the longer lengths are all parallel. The buckles here are all parallel, with the exception of the shorter one being at 90 degrees to each other. So let's get on and do those. Parts tree that we need are included in the bag B, and we need to remove these end buckles from the parts tree. Need to cut these away, so we've got 12 on this and 12 on this one, so there's going to be quite a bit of cutting, and again using a bit of 400 wet and dry paper. I'm going to make sure that the where we cut them is nice and smooth and there's no binding or rough edges on them. So it's just going to be a case of cutting each one of those with a pair of cutters as close as you can, but not to the point where you damage the actual eyelet, the actual buckle, the end buckle. So I'm just holding them with my fingers so they don't fly off around the room, chopping with my cutters, just nipping those off like so. And it's again patience game. So that's 12, and repeating that again, so it's a little bit of repetitive work, and again popping those through there. So it's just literally cutting those, and then making sure that where I cut them, that it's sort of smooth, no rough edges, so there's no binding on the model. Again, just being very careful with these very small pieces, and then we'll do the actual tie rods. So now that they've been cut, I'm now just smoothing the edges off. A little bit of wet and dry paper, 400 grit wet and dry paper, and what I'm doing is just gently rubbing the end where I cut with the cutters, and then feeling that with the tips of my finger, just to make sure that it's not rough. And it's a case of repeating that 24 times, I'm afraid. There's no way around. Just got to do. You've got to take your time and be patient. So I'll do that off camera and I'll come back to you once I've done them. Now we have our end buckles, 24. And now I have to turn my attention to the rods themselves. So they are various lengths, and just offering up each one. So let's have a little look, see if we can see. There we are. So that rod is the right one. That's good. So Again, using my drawing, selecting the rod, and then we can organise the rods and make up the rods, and then we'll sort about doing the right dimension. So be right back again. So I've organised the rods, and you can see the smaller rod here, that is scale, that comes to that one there. It's one of those, and then you'll see this rod here, again that's to scale, so it's one of those. And then you'll see that there's two of this one for this size, but you'll notice the rod numbers are the same, so 1220, 1220, so you'll have 4 1220s, and again for the slightly longer rods, the 1230s, you've got 2 there and 2 there, so you end up with 4 of these. So with the longer rods, what we're making is the 13.8 14.2s, and then the 24.2s and the 24.8 millimeters, and the singular rods we're making a 22.3 millimeter, and the smaller one we're making a 9 millimeter. So it's a case of twisting those ends together. So all I'm doing is I'm using a pair of electronic pliers here to grip the shaft, and these are not serrated, these are actually quite a plain one, so you do have to grip quite hard, but because they're not a serrated jaw, you're not going to, as long as you don't twist too much, you're not going to damage the actual shaft there. So it's a case of getting hold of, twisting the eyelets on, and I'm just going to spin them around so that they're a little bit equal as much as I possibly can by eye. And then once we've got them somewhere near, I will then do the vital measurement, and I've got a little tool to help me with the vital measurements. I've got a digital vernier caliper gauge so that I can measure the distance between the actual distance between the planes, they call it, so this distance here. So we'll adjust that up, so that's somewhere near. Don't know if it picks it up on the camera, but all I'm doing is, you've got a threaded part here and a threaded part here. I'm lining it up by eye so that they're roughly the same, and we'll do the final adjustments once I've got all of these onto the shafts. It's going to take me a little while. I won't bore you by doing all of those, and I'll come back to you once I've done those and got them all sorted. So back in a moment. So I've now done the tie rods, and I've managed to get these right. So there's 24.8 millimeters in between, 24.79ish, it's as near as you'll ever be, and you do 2 of those. Again, 24.83 on that one. I mean 0.03 of a millimeter, we're not going to fall out over. And again, this is 24.2, 24.23 on that one. This one is between the planes, just getting that lined up, 24.29. Might be able to get that a little bit more. So yeah, this one's at 24.919, so 24.2 is near as damn it as we can be. And next one, we need to be at, I think we need to be this one at 14.2 millimeters on the internal planes. So again, just get myself on there, 14.21, as close as we'll ever be. And next, so there's 2 of these, 14.21. And then the next one's at 13.8, 13.83. This is very, very close, 0.03 difference. 0.89, so I might need to trim that a little bit more. Another one at 22.2 millimeters. This is one of them. So I'm kind of 22.3. I need to trim that a little bit. And then the last one at 9mm. And I believe this one's a little bit more tricky to measure with the little device. There you go. I need to just bring that in a bit, 9.2. So I'll just need to adjust, and we'll be there. So now by the time you do bag B, parts bag B, so like I mentioned before, this one needs to be at 90 degrees to each other. This is the short one. So there you are. You now have a set of links at the right lengths: 9mm, 22.2, then 13.8, 14.2, 24.2, and not forgetting the 24.8. And I used a digital vernier to help me with that. And so now it's a case of attaching the rods that have been made up onto the axles. So as you can see on this one, I now have what is a steering linkage. Oh, steering linkage. There you go. And then just turn that round the other way, and we need to pop on the other rods. So I've got the 13.8s on the top here and the 14.2s on the bottom, and this is the front axles. And this is how we do it. So this is the axle, turn it round the other way. 13.8s on the top. Bring that down a bit lower. There you go. And just give that a little gentle push. Clips in. And the 14.2s on the bottom. Like so. And you give it a little push. And it little pops on. There you go. And the same again on the other side. Gentle push on the top one. Pop. And gentle push on the bottom one. Pop. So that's now the front axle. There we go. With the steering linkage as well. And I'll do the same for the rear. So on the rear axle, here we go. Here's the rear axle. Orientation correct. My 24.2s on the top. So again, there we go. Pop. And pop. There you go. Oh, a bit too far. Just bring it back. There we go. So that's the, and then my 24.8mm ones onto the bottom of the axle. Make sure that bearing stays in. So again, a little gentle pop, and it popped on. Get it lined up. Oh, too much. There you go. And there you have it. Now we have the front and rear axles done. So that concludes parts bag B. There are the rods, and fixing them onto the axles. That's the front axle, and that was the rear axle. Onto parts bag C, mounting the motor. Thank you for watching.